She said it in front of everyone. Not in a hallway, not in a whispered argument in the kitchen with the door pulled half shut, not in a phone call where she could hang up and pretend it went differently. She said it in the middle of my son 39 dining room, at a table set for 14, with the turkey still warm and the candles still lit, and every person we had gathered for Thanksgiving, sitting in absolute silence waiting to see what I would do. Anquat, you 39 are not welcome here anymore, Lorraine Donquat. She used my name. That is the detail I keep returning to. Not Mom, which she had called me inconsistently for 9 years. Not the sideways avoidance of you. She used my name precisely the way you use someone N39 name when you want them to understand that the relationship is over and the new terms are already in effect. The room went silent. I mean completely silent. The kind of silence that has weight and texture that you can feel pressing against the back of your neck. 14 people. My son, his children, my daughter and her husband, my sister-in-law, cousins, their families. All of them stopped mid-sentence, mid-bite, mid-breath, and turned to look at me. And I stood up, not because I was angry, not to fight. I want you to understand this from the beginning, because the story I am about to tell you will only make sense if you understand that what I did when I stood up from that table came not from rage but from something quieter and older and considerably more prepared. I stood up because I had been ready for this moment for 2 years, and I had something in my coat pocket that was going to change everything in that room before the evening was done. Welcome to Alpha Mom Stories, where silence is sometimes the loudest thing in the room. If you are new here, please subscribe and stay until the very end, because this story, mine, builds to something that I did not see coming myself when it started, and that I think you will not expect either. Leave a comment when you finish. I read everyone. They matter more than you know. My name is Lorraine Beaumont. I am 69 years old. I spent 35 years as a high school English teacher, which means I spent 35 years in rooms full of people who did not yet know how to say what they meant, and I made it my life 39 work to teach them. Language was my instrument. Words were my material. I understood in a way that you come to understand only after decades of living inside literature, that the most important things people say are almost never the things they think they are saying. A student who says, I don't understand the assignment, is often saying, I am afraid I am not smart enough for this. A parent who says you give too much homework is sometimes saying, I don't know how to help my child and it scares me. A daughter-in-law who says you 39 are not welcome here anymore is saying something I will get to in time, because even what was said at my son 39 Thanksgiving table, deserves the full accounting before you understand what it means. I was married to Bernard Beaumont for 41 years. Bernard was a man who built things, furniture mostly, in the garage workshop he had maintained since before we married, where he spent his weekend mornings and his summer evenings working in the meditative way that people who truly understand craft will recognize. He built our dining room table. He built the bed frame we slept in for 30 years. He built a rocking horse for each of our grandchildren, by hand, sanded smooth, painted in the colors they chose, their names carved underneath in his careful script. Bernard died 4 years ago, on a morning in April, when the workshop smelled like fresh sawdust and the birds had just come back. He went quietly, the way he had lived, without making a fuss, in the chair he liked best by the window. I found him there. I sat with him for a long time before I called anyone, because there are moments of that finality that belong only to the two people who have lived a life together, and I was not ready to share it yet. I will tell you that I have not fully recovered, and I do not expect to. Some losses are not recoverable. They are only carryable. You learn to carry them, and eventually they become part of your structure, the weight distributed, and you move through the world differently than you did before, but you move. I tell you about Bernard not as prologue but as foundation, because you cannot understand what happened at that Thanksgiving table without understanding what was missing from it. Bernard would not have allowed what happened to happen. Not through any dramatic intervention, he was not a dramatic man, but because his presence in a room changed the room. He was the kind of man whose stillness was a form of authority, who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Kelsey, my daughter-in-law, son Thomas, 39, wife of 9 years, had been careful around Bernard, not warm, but careful. The performance of care, which is not the same thing but serves a similar social function, while the performer believes they are not being watched. Bernard died. The careful performance became less necessary. And Kelsey, who had been waiting, I believed this, I have believed it for 3 years, began to take the ground she had wanted since the beginning. I need to tell you about Kelsey with the same precision I brought to telling you about my son Marcus in my last story. Wait, that 39's a different story, a different life. What I mean is this: I will not make Kelsey a villain. She is not a villain. She is a woman with specific fears and specific history and specific ideas about what her household should be and who should be in it. And those ideas were in direct conflict with my existence, and the conflict had been building for 9 years before it arrived at that table. Kelsey is 40 years old. She's the only child of parents who divorced when she was 7, and she was raised primarily by her mother, a woman I met twice, once at the wedding and once at the christening of her eldest, and who communicated in both meetings a very clear message. Kelsey 39. Home is Kelsey 39 territory, and the people in it serve at her invitation. Her mother ran her own household that way, tightly, with a clear hierarchy and clear rules about who belonged and who was tolerated. And Kelsey had absorbed this as the natural order. What Kelsey had not accounted for was that my son Thomas is my son. Not only Kelsey 39 husband, though he is that, and not only her children 39 father, though he is that also. He is the person I sat up with through 3 bouts of croup and a broken collarbone and a period in 8th grade when he was so unhappy that I drove him to school every morning for 4 months just so the day started with something reliable. He is the person I watched become himself, slowly and imperfectly and magnificently, the way children become themselves. He is my son in the full and irreducible sense of that word, and no amount of redefinition by anyone else changes the material fact of it. Kelsey understood this intellectually. What she felt about it was something different. In the 9 years of their marriage, the moves against me had been gradual. The first years were fine. The new marriage adjustment, the finding of footing, nothing I would characterize as hostile. When the children came, 2 girls and then a boy, I was present and useful, and Kelsey accepted that, in the way you accept something that serves a function you need. I was childcare. I was backup. I was the grandmother who could be called at 7 in the morning when a child was sick, and daycare when 39 Todd take them, and both parents had meetings that could not be moved. I showed up. Every time. The way I had always showed up for Thomas, the way Bernard had shown me by example, was what you did for the people you loved. After Bernard died, the dynamic shifted. I had expected it might shift. Grief changes people, and it changes the people around them, and I had prepared myself for some period of adjustment. What I had not prepared for was the speed or the direction. Within 4 months of Bernard 39's death, Kelsey had suggested to Thomas that perhaps the weekly Sunday dinners we had maintained for 6 years, at their house, which I had never presumed upon but had been invited to consistently since the children were small, were becoming a strain. Too much, too frequent, perhaps every other week. Thomas relayed this to me in the apologetic voice I had come to know. I said, of course, whatever works. Within another 2 months, the every other week had become once a month. Then the once a month became irregular. Then I went 8 weeks without seeing my grandchildren, and I realized, with a clarity that sat in my chest like a stone, that I had been managed down to optional. I called Thomas. Directly, which I did not do often, because Kelsey ran the household calendar and calling Thomas directly was understood, in their household 39 unwritten rules, as going around her. I called him anyway. In quat, Thomas, v quat. I said in quat, I haven't 39 seen the children in 8 weeks. And quat, I know. I would like to schedule something. A dinner, a weekend afternoon, anything don quat. Another pause. And quat, I 39. We'll talk to Kelsey about the calendar, don quat. He talked to Kelsey about the calendar. She proposed a date 6 weeks away. I said thank you and put it in my own calendar and did not push. 6 weeks away. For my grandchildren. I want to sit with that for a moment because I want you to feel the shape of it. Not the anger. I have moved through the anger, but the specific texture of being managed. Of being made to wait for access to the people you love most. Of understanding that the access is no longer yours by right or by history, but has been reclassified as a scheduled appointment, subject to approval, subject to revision, subject to the calendar of a woman who has decided you are no longer a member of this family, but a visitor in it. I went to see my attorney that same week. Her name is Patricia Webb, and she is a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s who specializes in family law and who had handled Bernard 39 estate, and who I trusted with the particular trust you give to people who have seen you in the worst weeks of your life and treated you well. I told her what was happening. I asked her what my options were. She told me about grandparent visitation rights. They vary by state, she explained, and they are not a guarantee, and pursuing them is an action that typically accelerates conflict rather than resolving it. She told me what they would and would not cover. She told me what documentation would be useful to have if it came to that, and what steps I might take now that would protect my position later. I left her office with information I hoped I would never need. I also left with something I had not expected. Patricia had mentioned, almost in passing, as I was putting on my coat, that she had recently handled a case involving a grandparent and a trust instrument. She mentioned it not as advice but as information in the way careful attorneys share things that are relevant without directing the outcome. I asked her a question. She answered it. I asked another. She answered that. I drove home and I sat in Bernard 39 workshop for a long time, which is what I do when I am thinking through something serious. It smells like him still. The sawdust and the linseed oil and something underneath that is just him, that I cannot name, that I am afraid will eventually fade. I sat in the chair he kept for when I came to watch him work, and I looked at the tools on the pegboard in the order he had hung them, and I thought about the trust instrument Patricia had mentioned. I thought about what Bernard would have said. I thought about what it means to build something that lasts, and what preparations are worth making before the moment you need. I spent the next several months making preparations. I am not going to detail all of them now, because some of them are private, and some of them are still in progress, and some of them belong to the ending of this story, rather than its middle. What I will tell you is that I was not passive. I was not sitting in Bernard 39 chair feeling sorry for myself. Though I did sometimes feel sorry for myself, honestly, because I am human and the situation deserved some sorrow. I was making the quiet, legal, and entirely appropriate arrangements of a woman who understands that the people who love you do not always protect you and that sometimes you have to protect yourself. And I kept showing up. This is important. I kept calling. I kept sending the children small things, not extravagant things, nothing that could be characterized as an attempt to buy their affection, but the small attentions that grandmothers send. A book I thought Ellie would like, a newspaper clipping about trains for Marcus Jr., because he was going through a train phase, a card on each birthday, handwritten. The way Bernard had always said, handwritten notes were the only kind that counted. I kept being their grandmother in every way that was available to me, and I kept noticing what was changing. 8 months before Thanksgiving, Thomas called me on a Sunday morning, unexpectedly, without apparent purpose, which was itself unusual enough that I noted it. We talked for an hour. He sounded tired in a specific way, the tired of a man who is carrying more than he is telling. He asked about the garden. He asked about Patricia, whom he knew because Patricia had been at Bernard 39 bedside at the end, and Thomas had been there and they had spoken. He asked if I was managing all right. I said I was managing fine. And quat. Are you happy, Mom? And quat, he said, and the directness of it surprised me because Thomas is not by nature a direct person. I said, and quat. I 39, I'm content. I miss your father every day. I miss seeing you and the children more than I let on. But I am 39. All right, on quat. A silence, and quat. I know things have been in quat. He stopped. And quat. I 39. Sorry things have been harder lately. Quat and quat. I said carefully. And quat. You don 39 tould need to apologize for anything. And quat. I know v quat, he said. And then, and quat. I love you, Mom. Quat. And quat. I love you too, v quat, I said. And quat. That has never been in question, quat. We hung up. I sat with that call for a long time afterward. Not because of what was said, but because of what was underneath it. Thomas calling on a Sunday morning without purpose, asking if I was happy. Thomas sounding tired in that specific way. Thomas saying, I know things have been harder lately, which presupposes an awareness of the hardness that he had not previously acknowledged. Something was shifting at his end too. I did not know what. I did not press. But I made a note of it in the way I make notes of everything, internally, completely, in the filing system I-39 I built over 69 years of paying attention. Thanksgiving was 6 weeks later. I want to tell you about that morning, the morning of Thanksgiving, because I made a decision that morning that becomes important later. I had been invited. That should not require noting, but it does, because the previous year I had not been invited to Thanksgiving. A first in 34 years of being someone 39 mother. And the year before that, I had been invited in the way you invite, someone you 39'd or obligated to. Without warmth, the invitation arriving so late it was functionally informational rather than genuine. This year Thomas had called me himself, 2 weeks before, and asked if I would come, and there had been something in his voice that I recognized from that Sunday call. The same specific tiredness, the same undertone of something not quite said. I said yes. I said I would bring the sweet potato casserole and the cranberry relish, which I have made every Thanksgiving for 40 years, and which Bernard used to stand next to and eat directly from the bowl before I could get it to the table. On the morning of Thanksgiving, I stood in my kitchen making the cranberry relish, and I thought about what I was walking into. I am an English teacher. I am a woman who spent 35 years reading subtext. I knew that the dynamic in that household had not resolved itself. I knew that whatever Thomas had been carrying was still being carried. I knew that Kelsey had not changed her position regarding my place in their lives. Her actions over the past year were too consistent and too deliberate to suggest otherwise. I knew that something might happen at that table. I stood in my kitchen, and I thought about Patricia Webb and the preparations I had made, and I thought about Bernard at his workbench, who had told me once, during a complicated period with a difficult neighbor that required patience over time rather than confrontation in the moment, that the best tool for any job is the one you any 39 I've already sharpened. I had sharpened my tools. I went to my desk. I opened the drawer where I keep important documents. I took out one envelope and put it in the inside pocket of my coat. Then I drove to my son 39 house. The table was set beautifully. Kelsey is a gifted hostess. I have never doubted this, and the table looked like something from a magazine, all warm autumnal tones and careful placement. There were 14 of us. Thomas and Kelsey, their 3 children, Kelsey 39, mother Diane, Kelsey 39, brother, and his wife, my daughter Caroline and her husband, 3 cousins with their families, and me. The first hour was fine. The food was good. The wine was poured. The children were happy in the particular loud, scattered way of children at family gatherings, which I love. I love the sound of that. The specific joyful chaos of children who feel safe enough to be loud. My grandchildren sat near me for part of the meal, and my granddaughter Ellie, who is 8 and who has her grandfather 39 eyes, told me an extremely long story about a disagreement at school that I listened to with full attention, because Ellie 39 stories deserve full attention. I was watching Kelsey the way I watch things I need to understand. Not staring. I am too experienced in rooms full of people to stare, but attending. She was tightly pleasant in the way she gets when she is managing something internally. She poured wine with a slightly fixed smile. She directed the meal with precision. She laughed at the right moments. Halfway through the main course, she said something to Diane, her mother, in a low voice. Diane nodded. Then Kelsey looked at me. And I knew. I do not know how I knew. Call it 35 years of reading rooms. Call it the particular frequency that danger broadcasts on. The one that women who have had to navigate difficult rooms for a long time learn to receive. I knew that something was coming, and it was coming soon, and the shape of it was already formed. It came during the lull between the main and the dessert, when the table is still full of people, but the busyness of eating has settled and conversation has become the primary activity. Thomas had gotten up to refill wine glasses. Caroline was talking to one of the cousins. The children had dispersed to the living room. Kelsey stood up. She did not tap a glass. She did not clear her throat. She simply stood up, which at a table full of people has the effect of a change in air pressure, a sudden slight atmospheric shift that makes everyone look up. And she said, en quote, I 39 like to say something done quote. The table settled into attention. She looked at me, not the room, at me. En quote, Lorraine v. quote, she said, en quote, I think it A39 important for everyone here to know that you are not welcome in this house anymore. This is my family 39 home, and I make the decisions about who is part of our lives, and I-39 decided that things have gone too far, and I-39 not going to pretend otherwise at the dinner table. Quote, the silence. I described it at the beginning of this story, and I will not over-describe it now. It was complete. It was the silence of 14 people who have just witnessed something that cannot be unwitnessed, whose instinct is to protect themselves from the social radiation of the moment by becoming very still. Thomas had stopped with the wine bottle in his hand. He was looking at Kelsey with an expression I could not fully read from where I sat. Something between shock and the terrible recognition of a thing that has been long anticipated and has finally arrived. Caroline had her hand over her mouth. Kelsey 39 mother Diane was looking at the table, and I was sitting in my chair, and I felt the eyes of everyone in that room on me, and I felt the weight of what had just been said, not only the words themselves but the choice to say them here, now publicly, in front of my grandchildren 39 and cousins and my daughter, and people who would carry this moment home with them and sit with it and talk about it over their own kitchen tables. She had chosen to do it publicly. That was the calculation. She had decided that a public pronouncement was harder to walk back, harder for Thomas to contradict, harder for me to recover from. She was using the audience the way people use audiences, as weight, as amplification, as the thing that makes a declaration stick. And I stood up. I want to describe this carefully because the physical reality of it matters. I am 69 years old. I have the posture of a woman who spent 35 years standing in front of classrooms because you cannot teach effectively from a slouch. I am not a large woman, but I am not an insubstantial one, and when I stand up in a room, I do not disappear. Bernard used to say I had a teacher 39 gravity, that rooms reorganized themselves slightly when I entered them. I had always taken that as a professional observation. At that moment, it was the most useful thing about me. I stood up and the room, which was already silent, seemed to contract slightly. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat, which was on the back of my chair, and I took out the envelope. I set it on the table in front of me. I did not open it. I did not hand it to anyone. I simply set it there, visible, and I looked at Kelsey, and then I said, "Unquat." All right, unquat, just those 2 words. Quiet, without anger. The room did not know what to do with that. I could feel the confusion, the expectation of tears or fury or flight, the narrative these people had braced for, the scene they had prepared to witness, not arriving. Kelsey had expected something. I do not know precisely what, but something reactive, something she could respond to, something that would put her in the position of the person managing the situation rather than the person who had just exploded it. I gave her nothing of what she expected. And quat, I 39 been coming to this house. Vaquat, I said, still quiet, still standing, and quat for 9 years. I was here when Ellie was born and when Marcus Jr. was born and when Sophie was born. I have been here at 4 in the morning when the children were sick and Thomas needed help, and the 2 of you were both exhausted. And I have never once, in 9 years, been asked. I have always been called. That is a fact. It is not a complaint. It is a fact. Kelsey's deft jaw had tightened. And quat, I am going to say one other thing, vquat, I said in quat, and then I am going to go don't quat. I picked up the envelope. Quat Bernard, my husband, Thomas 39 father, the grandfather of those 3 children, spent the last year of his life working with our attorney on something he called the Children 39 legacy. He was a man who built things, and he believed that the most important things you build are the ones your grandchildren can stand on. He did not tell me everything he was doing. He showed me what he 39D made when he was done, the way he always did. The quat, I held the envelope. The room was so quiet I could hear the candles. And quat, inside this envelope is a letter from Bernard, signed and notarized before he died, describing the terms of a trust he established for Ellie, Marcus Jr., and Sophie. The trust is fully funded. It cannot be altered by anyone other than its beneficiaries when they come of age. It provides for their education in full at any institution they choose. It provides a sum at 25. It provides ongoing income from the interest thereafter, and quat. I set the envelope back on the table. And quat. I am telling you this not to threaten and not to bargain. Bernard built this for his grandchildren because he loved them. It exists regardless of what happens in this room tonight. The children will have it when they are old enough to receive it. That is not contingent on anything, quat. I looked at Kelsey, directly, without flinching. And quat, but I want you to understand something. Bernard built this. He built it the way he built everything, quietly, without announcement, without needing anyone to know while he was doing it. He built it because he believed these children deserved to know where they came from and to have what he could give them. He is gone. And the question in this room tonight is not whether I am welcome at this table. The question is what kind of story these children are going to be told about who they are and where they come from and who love them. Quat. I put on my coat. And quat. I 39 going to go home now, vquat, I said. And quat. I love Thomas and I love those children. I will continue to love them regardless of what is decided here. The envelope goes to Patricia Webb 39 office Monday morning. She will be in touch about the formalities, quat. I picked up the envelope. I walked to the door. I want to be honest with you about what that walk felt like, because this is a story about a real thing and real things deserve honesty. It did not feel triumphant. It felt like walking through water. Every step deliberate and heavy, and requiring more from me than I had expected. Somewhere between the table and the front door, my eyes were hot and my hands were not entirely steady, and I was holding everything very carefully inside the posture that Bernard had always said meant I was in a room I needed to hold my ground in. The children were in the living room. Ellie was on the couch with a book. She looked up when I came through, and quat, Grandma, are you leaving? And quat, she said. And quat, I am, sweetheart, vquat, I said. And quat, but we didn't 39 to have pie yet. And quat, no, next time, quat, I kissed her forehead. And quat, you 39, are reading us, it's Web vquat, she said. And quat, at 39 sad and quat, it is, quat, I said. And quat, but at 39 the right kind of sad. The kind that means something mattered, and quat. She looked at me with her grandfather 39 eyes. And quat, "Oh, Cat," she said, with the particular acceptance that children have for things they done ani 39 tud yet understand, but trust will be explained eventually. I went out the front door. I sat in my car in the driveway for 3 minutes. Not crying, I was past the point where crying was what was needed. Just breathing. Just giving myself the 3 minutes to reorganize before the 40-minute drive home. Then I drove. The drive was quiet. The roads were Thanksgiving-empty, that particular holiday stillness where the world has retreated indoors, and the streets belong to anyone who is outside of it. I drove and I did not sort through what had happened because I was not ready to sort it. I drove and I thought about Bernard at his workbench and Ellie on the couch with Charlotte 39 Webb, and the way the room had felt when I stood up, the weight redistribution of it. I thought about the thing Ellie said, the right kind of sad, the kind that means something mattered. I got home, I unlocked the door, I hung up my coat. I went to Bernard 39 workshop and I sat in my chair and I stayed there for a long time. Thomas called at 9:30. "En quoi, Mom, vi quoi?" he said. "En quoi, Thomas, en quoi?" A long pause. I could hear him breathing, and I could hear, distantly, the sound of his house. Television or voices, or the specific ambient sound of a home where people are present. "En quoi, I'd in 39 tud know she was going to do they quoi," he said. "En quoi, it wasn't 39. En quoi," he stopped. "En quoi, I want you to know that I'd in 39 tud. En quoi, Thomas va quoi," I said gently. "En quoi, you don 39 tud need to explain what you 39 tud do. I know what you din 39 tud do. What I need to know is what you N39 are going to do. Quat, the longest pause. He said, "En quoi, I 39 been thinking about that for 4 hours. En quoi, and I think I 39 been a coward." "Va quat," he said, "en quat for a long time." About a lot of things, en quat. I was quiet. In 35 years of teaching, I learned that some statements need to be received rather than responded to. That responding too quickly to a thing someone has found the courage to say can interrupt the courage and send them back to silence. I let Thomas 39's statement sit between us, received, acknowledged, without rushing past it. "En quoi, your father would be ashamed of me, va quoi," he said. "En quoi, your father vi quoi," I said carefully. "En quoi, would understand that you 39 vi been in an impossible position. And he would also tell you that the duration of an impossible position is a choice, don't quat." A silence that was different from the earlier ones. Softer, something in it giving way. "En quat, the trust vi quat," he said. "I didn't 39 know about that either quat." He did it quietly. Quat and quat, that 39, exactly what he would do. Don quat. His voice broke slightly on it, the way voices break when grief is hiding in ordinary sentences and catches you sideways. "En quat, exactly don't quat, en quat, yes, vi quat," I said. We talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation Thomas and I had had since Bernard 39's funeral, possibly longer. He told me things I had suspected and things I hadn't 39 tud. He told me about the pressure at home and the ways it had accumulated, and the Sunday morning when he had called me to ask if I was happy, which he described as the morning he had woken up and thought about what his father would say if he could see the way things had gone. He told me about conversations with Kelsey that had not gone well, and ones that had, and the particular grief of a man who loves his wife and loves his mother and has been told, explicitly and implicitly, that these two loves cannot coexist. I told him that they could. I believe that. I believe it because Bernard and I managed it with his mother for 41 years, imperfectly and with effort. But we managed it because we had both decided it was worth the effort. That is always the question. Not whether at 39 hard. It is always hard. Whether it is worth it. Thomas said, and quat. "I want to figure out how to make this worth it." Quat and quat, then we start there. Quat, I said. "Now, I want to tell you what happened in the weeks after. Because I have been honest with you about the hard things. And I intend to be honest about what followed. Which was not a simple resolution. Because simple resolutions are for stories that are not quite true. Kelsey did not call me. I had not expected her to. What she did, in the week after Thanksgiving, was have what I understand to have been several very difficult conversations with Thomas. Conversations I was not party to, and about which I know only what Thomas chose to tell me, which was partial and filtered through his own perception, and therefore incomplete. That is appropriate. The inside of a marriage belongs to the people in it. What Thomas told me was this: Kelsey had been afraid. Not of me specifically, or not only of me, but of what she understood my presence to represent. She had been raised in a household where the grandmother 39 presence had not been a gift but a complication, where her own mother 39, mother had been critical and controlling and had made her mother small, and she had learned, in the way children learn things that become assumptions, that the grandmother in the house is a danger. She had put me in the shape of her own grandmother 39 silhouette. She had been reacting to that shape for 9 years, without clearly seeing the difference between the shape and the person. This is not an excuse. Kelsey is a 40-year-old woman and she is responsible for the things she chooses and how she chooses them. What she did at that table was wrong. It was a deliberate public humiliation intended to use the audience as a weapon, and it does not become not wrong because there is a history behind it. But understanding it changes how I carry it. Bernard used to say that people are usually doing their best with what they have, and when their best is not good enough, you have to decide whether you want to help them have more or simply move out of range. He was a wise man, and I have found no better framework for the situations that require one. Kelsey called me on the 15th day after Thanksgiving, a Saturday morning. I was in the garden, the late season tidying, the work you do in November to prepare for what March will need. And quat, Lorraine va quat, she said. And then, after a pause, and quat, I would like to talk to you, if you 39 are willing, quat, I said. She came on a Sunday afternoon, which felt deliberate on her part, and I respected that deliberateness. She came alone. Thomas had offered to come, and she had said no. This needed to be without him, which I agreed with. I made tea. We sat at the kitchen table where I have sat with the difficult things for 40 years. She was not easy in the space. She held her mug with both hands, which is what people do when they need something to hold, and she's looked around in the kitchen the way people look at a place they 39. They're in for the first time when they 39. I've imagined it for years, she said. And quat, your kitchen looks like him, don quat. I looked around, the workbench calendar on the wall, the wooden trivet he 39 made me. The photograph on the shelf of the two of us on our 25th anniversary, both of us a little sunburned and laughing at something just outside the frame. And quat, yes, be quat, I said. And quat, I suppose it does and quat. She was quiet for a long time, then she said, and quat, I owe you an apology, I know that. I-39, I've known it since that night, and I-39, I've been trying to find a way to say it that means something, and not just a way to make myself feel better for having said it, quat. I waited. And quat, what I did was wrong, v quat, she said. And quat, the way I did it was wrong. I know I-39 made things hard for you, for a long time. I have told myself reasons, but I understand that reasons aren't 39 tud the same as justifications, and I-39, not coming here to justify don't quat. I looked at her. I looked at her the way I looked at students who were saying the hardest true thing they knew how to say and needed to be met rather than managed. And quat, thank you, for quat, I said. And quat, that took something and quat, she looked at me. And quat, I don 39 know how to do this, for quat, she said. And quat, I don 39 know how to do, and quat, she gestured vaguely in the space between us, and quat, this, a mother-in-law. I have never had a version of it that was 39 tug. I didn't 9 tug have a good example, don't quat, and quat, I know the quat, I said. And quat, Thomas told me something about that, and quat, I 39's been treating you like someone I needed to defend against, vi quat, she said. And quat, and I think I knew somewhere that it was 39 tut, she stopped, started again, and quat, when you stood up at that table. And you didn't 39 tut and quat, she looked down. And quat, I expected you to fight. And you didn't 39 tut, you just said what was true and then you left. And I sat at that table for 2 hours after you left and I thought about that, don't quat, and quat, what did you think? And quat, I asked, and quat, that I had made a mistake, not just that night. A long one, quat, she looked up, and quat, the children ask about you, Ellie especially. She told me what you said when you were leaving. About Charlotte 39 webbed on en quat. I felt something shift in my chest. En quat, she told me ve quat. Kelsey said en quat, that you said it was the right kind of sad. The kind that means something mattered, en quat. She was quiet. En quat, I think about that a lot. En quat, we talked for 3 hours. Not easily, the ease is not there yet, and I will not pretend otherwise. There were long silences and moments of visible difficulty, and a point in the middle, when Kelsey looked out the window at the garden for 5 full minutes without speaking, and I let her. But we talked. Honestly, in the way that people can talk when they 39 Dodd, we've decided that the performance is too expensive, and the truth, however uncomfortable, is the only thing that moves anything forward. She asked me about Bernard, not about the trust. She did not mention the trust once, and I noted that and respected it. She asked about Bernard the person, what he was like, what he had been like with Thomas when Thomas was young, I told her. I went and got the photograph of Bernard with the children from the workshop, the one where he is showing Ellie how to use a hand plane on a piece of scrap wood, and her face is pure concentrated delight. I set it in front of Kelsey. She looked at it for a long time. And quat, she looks so much like him, vaquat, she said. And quat, she does vaquat, I said. And quat, she has his hands too. The way she holds things, aunt quat. Kelsey looked up at me, something in her face that was new. Not warm exactly, but open, available in a way it had not been before. And quat, I want my children to know where they come from. Viquat, she said, and I heard underneath it the thing she could not quite say but was saying anyway. I want to know where they come from, too. I want someone to hand me the photograph and tell me what it means. I handed her the photograph. And Quat, keep it, Viquat, I said. And Quat, put it somewhere they can see it, and Quat. She took it home with her. Let me tell you where things are now, because you deserve the full accounting. And because the full accounting is more honest than either the triumphant ending or the tragic one. Thomas comes on Sunday mornings now, sometimes alone, sometimes with the children, occasionally, twice, so far, with Kelsey. These visits are not the effortless Sunday dinners of the early years. They are the effort-visible kind, the kind where you can see the work being done, and I respect that more than I would respect the effortless kind at this stage, because effort is what the situation calls for. Ellie is reading everything I give her. I have been sending books since she was old enough for chapter books, and the giving has not stopped, but now she calls me about them. Actually calls, on the phone, in the charming, urgent way of 8-year-olds who have finished a book and need to discuss it immediately. We talked for 45 minutes about Charlotte T39 Webb. She wanted to know why Charlotte dies. I told her the truth, which is that Charlotte dies because she is finished with her work, and because the book needed you to feel the loss in order to understand what you had. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "En quat," like Grandpa Bernard done quat, just like that, a statement, not a question. "En quat, yes, the quat," I said. "En quat," exactly like that. En quat, Marcus Jr. has asked Thomas to bring him to see where the tools are. Bernard 39 workshop. Thomas asked if that would be all right with me. I said, of course. I said I had been wondering how long it would take. We went on a Saturday morning, the three of us, and I showed Marcus Jr. the tools in the order they hang, and I showed him the carved initials under each of the things Bernard made that are still in the house, and I showed him where the light comes in the workshop window in the morning, and Bernard said that light was the best thing about the space, that you could always see clearly what you were working on. Marcus Jr. stood at the workbench, and he put his hands on it, flat, the way you put your hands on something to feel what it is. He stayed like that for a while. Then he looked up and said, "Unquat, can I make something?" Unquat. Thomas looked at me. "Unquat, of course you can, Viquat," I said. "We are going to build a birdhouse. It will not be perfect. The cuts will probably be uneven and the roof may not sit quite right, and that is fine. That is exactly fine, because the point of a birdhouse is not the birdhouse." Bernard knew that. He was a man who built things, and what he understood, that I have spent 4 years learning after his death, is that the building is the whole thing. Not the object at the end. The building. The attention it requires. The patience. The standing beside someone and showing them what your hands know and watching their hands learn it. The building is how you give someone something they will have after you are gone. I am in my house on an ordinary evening in January. Outside the window, the garden is sleeping and the workshop light is on, because I have gotten into the habit of leaving it on in the evenings, just the one lamp on the back wall so the window glows. I don't 39 Tud have a reason for this that I can fully explain. It just seems right that the light should be on. The envelope with Bernard 39 letters is in Patricia Webb 39 files now, where it has always been going. The children will have what he built for them when they are old enough to receive it. It is not contingent on anything. It never was. Kelsey and I are not where I hope we will be someday. I will tell you that plainly. We are somewhere in the middle of a long road that was badly started and is now, slowly, being walked in the right direction. She is trying. I am trying. We are both trying with full knowledge of the effort it costs, which is the only honest kind of trying. Thomas calls on Sunday evenings now, reliable as a tide. He called last Sunday and we talked about nothing important for 40 minutes, and at the end he said, "En quat, Mom, do you remember what Dad used to say about the birdhouse? En quat." "En quat, which birdhouse?" I said. "En quat, any birdhouse, all of them. He used to say the bird does N39 Tud care if the angle is perfect. The bird just wants somewhere safe to land in quat." I was quiet for a moment. "En quat, I remember Viquat." I said, "En quat, I think about that a lot lately, Viquat," he said. "En quat, your father Viquat," I said. "En quat, thought about everything a lot." He just did it quietly. "En quat, I know Viquat," Thomas said. "En quat, E39 trying to do that more." En quat, we said goodnight. I sat in the workshop for a while after, with the lamp on and the January dark outside and Bernard 39 tools on the pegboard in their order, and I thought about what it means to be a place safe enough to land. Not easy, not uncomplicated. Not free of history or conflict or the accumulated weight of nights and difficult years, but safe. A place where the truth can be spoken and the door is open and the light is on. That is what I am trying to be. That is what Bernard was, always. That is what I am learning at 69 in the kitchen and the workshop and the Sunday morning calls and the 45-minute conversations about why Charlotte has to die. It is the right kind of sad, the kind that means something mattered. I am going to leave you with the thing I have spent the most time sitting with since that Thanksgiving evening. Not the moment I stood up. People keep asking me about the moment I stood up, and it matters, but it is not the most important thing. The most important thing is what I said to Ellie on my way out the door. The right kind of sad is the kind that means something mattered. If someone is trying to tell you that you don't ani 39 tud matter, that you are not welcome, that the history you carry is inconvenient, that the love you have given is being reclassified as something that can be revoked, I want you to remember this. The things that matter do not stop mattering because someone says they don't at 39 tud. The things you have built do not stop standing because someone wants them gone. The love you have put into people, quietly, consistently, over years, is in them. It cannot be extracted. It is part of their structure now. You built it. It holds. Stand up. Say what is true. Set the envelope on the table. And then go home and leave the light on. That is my story. If it found you when you needed it, leave me a comment. Tell me about the table you sat at and what you did when silence fell. I am here. I am listening. Subscribe because next week I want to tell you about the morning Marcus Jr. And I finished The Birdhouse, and what was written on the bottom, and what his face looked like when he read it, and what his grandfather would have said about the angle of the roof. It was not perfect. It was exactly right. I have been thinking about what it means to be a woman who stands up. Not in the physical sense, though that matters, and I described it deliberately. The posture of 35 years in classrooms, the teacher 39 gravity, the room reorganizing itself. Not even in the narrative sense of standing up against something. I mean it in the older sense, the sense that Bernard understood when he talked about the things you build, the sense that has to do with not collapsing. There is a particular pressure that accumulates over years when someone is steadily, methodically reducing your space. It is not a dramatic pressure. That is what makes it so effective and so difficult to name while it is happening. If someone screams at you, you know what that is. You can call it what it is. You can show it to people, and they will recognize it. But when someone simply adjusts the thermostat of a relationship degree by degree, when they move the furniture of your access to people you love 1 inch at a time, when they reclassify you, slowly, plausibly, with enough social cover that each individual move seems arguable, the difficulty is that you begin, after long enough, to doubt your own reading of it. Is it really so bad, you ask yourself? Am I being unfair? Maybe she is just busy. Maybe the calendar really is full. Maybe I am asking for too much, expecting too much, taking up too much space. This is the most insidious part of that kind of campaign. It works not by force, but by erosion. Not by breaking you down, but by making you doubt whether anything is being broken at all. I want to tell you about a student I had in my last year of teaching. Her name was Priya, and she was 16. And she was one of the sharpest readers I'd ever encountered. The kind of student who could pull a theme from a text in the first reading and articulate it with more precision than most adults manage after 3. She was also, that year, in a friendship that was doing to her socially what Kelsey had been doing to me domestically. The slow reduction, the reclassification, the accumulation of small adjustments that left her, by February, genuinely unsure whether she had ever had any ground at all. I kept her after class one day. I said, "And quat, you 39 are reading yourself the way you read the characters you don a 39 tuck trust. As if you need to verified, quat." She looked at me. "And quat, trust your first reading, quat," I said. "And quat, you have been right every time in this room. You are right about this too. Don't quat," she cried briefly, in the way of someone who has been holding something that was too heavy to hold and has finally been given permission to put it down. Then she straightened up and she said, "And quat, how do you know when to trust it? And quat, when the evidence keeps pointing the same direction, quat," I said. "And quat, 1 data point is a day. 10 data points is a pattern. 20 is a structure. At some point you stop asking if it 39 real and start asking what ye 39 dur going to do about it, don quat." She nodded. She went back to her desk. She did not need me to tell her what to do about it. She just needed me to confirm that the thing she was reading was real. I thought about Priya a lot in the years that Kelsey was narrowing my access to Thomas and the children. I thought about what I had told her. 1 data point is a day. 10 is a pattern. 20 is a structure. At some point you stop asking if it 39 real. I had stopped asking a long time before Thanksgiving. What I had done instead was prepare. The appraisal of what I had. The consultation with Patricia. The understanding of what was legally available to me. The quiet establishment of the trust, which had not been my idea alone, but Bernard 39 idea completed and activated by me, his last gift becoming useful in exactly the moment it was needed, the way gifts from the right people always seem to do. And the envelope in my coat pocket. I want to tell you more about the envelope because I have referred to it without fully explaining what it was, and the full explanation is part of the story. Bernard began working on the grandchildren 39 trust in the last year of his life. I knew this in a general way. He had mentioned it in the sideways manner he had with things he was still working out, referring to it as the legacy project, which was not a phrase I pressed him on because I understood it was in process. When he finished, he sat me down at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon in March, and he walked me through it, the structure of it, the amounts, the terms, the timeline. He had done this with Patricia, and it was properly documented and properly funded. And he answered my questions with the patience of a man who has thought something all the way through and is confident in what he has made. At the end, he gave me two things. The first was a copy of the trust documents. Those went in my files. The second was an envelope. He had written the children 39 names on the front. Ellie, Marcus Jr., Sophie, in his handwriting. The same careful script that was under the rocking horses and the furniture and the initials in the baseboards of the things he had made. And quat, this is a letter for them, vaquat, he said, and quat, for when they 39 door old enough. Tell them what they came from, not just the money they 39. I'll know about the money when the time comes. Tell them what the money came from, what we built and how we built it, and what we hoped for them. Don't quat. I put it in the envelope with the trust documents. And then, on the morning of Thanksgiving, I took it out of the files and I put it in my coat pocket. Not because I'd planned to produce it, not precisely. I put it in my pocket the way you put a tool in your pocket when you are going somewhere that might require it. Not knowing for certain, but prepared. Bernard taught me that. He never went to a job without the right tools, even when he was not sure he would need all of them. He said it was not pessimism, it was respect for the work. When I set the envelope on the Thanksgiving table, I had not decided in advance exactly what I would say. What I said came from the moment and from 35 years of knowing how to hold a room and from the specific quality of the silence after Kelsey spoke. What I knew was that the moment required something that was not anger and not tears and not flight, because all of those would have given Kelsey the scene she was prepared to manage. What it required was truth, stated plainly, with the evidence in the room. The envelope was the evidence. I did not need to open it. The existence of it was enough. The fact of Bernard 39 quiet preparation. The fact that while Kelsey had been reducing my space in the family for 9 years, Bernard had been building something in that same family that could not be reduced, could not be reclassified, could not be managed out or scheduled away or revised by any one 39 decision about who was welcome and who was not. The children are welcome. That is what Bernard built. Not me. Me, I can take care of myself. I have demonstrated that adequately. The children. Their access to where they came from. Their right to know the story of the people who loved them before they arrived. That is what the envelope said, on a table in November, with 14 people watching and candles burning and the turkey barely cooled. That is what I said when I stood up. You cannot remove someone from a family that loves them by announcing it at a dinner table. Love is not a guest list. It is not a calendar subject to approval. It is not a position you hold at someone else 39 permission. It is a structure you build over years quietly, in the specific language of showing up and paying attention and remembering the right things and being present when presence is what 39 needed. Bernard built that structure. I have been building it my whole life. My grandchildren are inside it. Whether anyone revises the guest list or not, they will always be inside it. That is not a threat and not a boast. It is simply what is true about the things you build when you build them right. Let me tell you one more thing, because I said I would give you the full accounting, and I meant it. 3 weeks after Kelsey came to my house for tea, Ellie called me. This happens regularly now. The reading calls, the book discussions, the 45-minute conversations about plot and character, and why the sad things have to happen. This call was different. She had found something. She had been in the workshop with Thomas and Marcus Jr. the previous Saturday, watching the birdhouse take shape, and she had wandered to the corner where the finished pieces are. The things Bernard made that are waiting for wherever they 39 are going. She had found under a cloth something she hadn't 39 tut expected, a small bookshelf, size for a child 39 room, painted in a particular shade of blue. Not sky blue, not navy, but the specific medium blue that Ellie has been noted to love since she was 4 years old, that she associates with, as she once told Bernard with great seriousness, the feeling of a good book, Bernard had known this about her. He had remembered it the way he remembered the right things. He had built her a bookshelf, in the specific blue, with her name carved into the top rail in his careful script. And on the bottom of the shelf, visible only if you bend down to look, the way his initials in the baseboard are visible, only if you pull out the refrigerator, he had carved something else. For Ellie, who reads to understand. Keep understanding. Love, Grandpa B. Ellie called me to tell me this, in the urgent way she calls about the important things. And quat, Grandma V quat, she said. And quat, he made me something, don quat, and quat, I know ve quat, I said, though I hadn't 39 tut known about the shelf. And quat, he was always making something. Don quat, and quat, he'd do what color I like, the quat, she said, with the wonder of a child who has discovered that they were seen, that someone paid attention to the small, specific fact of them and held on to it. And quat, he always noticed the right things about the people he loved. Quat, I said. A pause, then, and quat, Grandma, do you think he knew it would be here? For when I found it. And quat, I thought about Bernard at the workbench, the library book approach to framing, the initials in the baseboard, the USB drive he'd in 39 tud fully understand, the trust document, the envelope, the specific blue that was exactly Ellie 39 blue. And quat, yes, V quat, I said. I think he knew quat. Another pause. Ellie processing. And quat, that 39 kind of like Charlotte V quat, she said finally. And quat. She made something and then she was gone and it was still there on quat. I had to take a breath. And quat, that 39, exactly like Charlotte V quat, I said. And quat, okay V quat, to tell you, quat and quat, C59, glad you did, V quat, I said. And quat, call me any time. About anything. That is a standing offer. Dot quat and quat, okay, Grandma and quat, Ellie and quat and quat, and quat, the shelf looks good in your room and perfect, V quat, she said. And quat, I put Charlotte E39 web on it first and quat, of course she did. I sat in the workshop after that call, in the chair by the window where the light is best, and I looked at the pegboard with the tools in their order, and the lamp that I leave on in the evenings and the corner, where the finished things wait under their cloth, and I thought about what Bernard had built and what I was building and what Ellie would build, someday, in the specific way she would not yet know to predict. The shelf is in her room. Charlotte 39 web is on it. Her grandfather 39 handwriting is carved into the bottom rail. She knows where she comes from. She will always know. And that, in the end, is the only thing that matters. Not the dinner tables and the guest lists and the calendars and the envelopes and the standing up and the walking out. Those are the moments. They are real and they matter, and I am not diminishing them. But underneath all of them is the only thing that lasts. Which is this: do the people you love know that they are loved? Do they have, somewhere they can put their hands on it when they need it, the evidence of what they mean? Bernard made sure. I am making sure. If you are listening and you have grandchildren or children or anyone whose understanding of where they come from depends on you, make sure. Write the letter. Build the shelf. Carve your name in the baseboard. Put the evidence somewhere they can find it when they need it. Leave the light on. Drop a comment. Tell me about the thing someone built for you that was waiting when you needed it. I am here. I am listening. And I will be back next Sunday with the birdhouse and what was written on the